What's up, everyone? How's it going? This podcast is brought to you by Audible. You can grab a free audiobook and support the podcast at the same time by going to audibletrial.com/Courtney Diamond. I'm currently listening to A New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose by Eckhart Tolle. Is that how you say his name? Hopefully. But if that's not your thing, you can get any other book for free through that link. I also put it in the description for your convenience. Now, for this podcast, I sat down with the co-owner of the Fortress of Inca and Huma Blanco shoe companies. He's a foodie and traveler, and he's got a lot of interesting insight into the political situation that we find ourselves in these days. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this conversation I had with my friend Dory Benami. I feel ya. How else is everything else? I only see the social media side of you, which is delicious foods,
yes,
traveling.
Yeah, so I own two shoe companies.
Mm-hmm.
I co-own, and so I was doing a lot of traveling because of that, and got into food, more into food because Peru, where we make the shoes, is really well known for its culinary scene. They've got 3 of the top 50 restaurants in the world in Lima.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And ceviche is like the most amazing thing to eat. So there's a different cevicheria for every day of the week there that you can go to that's extraordinary.
Oh.
Before working in Peru, I was working in China. I was living in China, and food was like my number one obstacle. It was the number one thing that I had to deal with on a daily basis and struggle with. So it's just a pleasure to be in Peru and to work there because the food is so great.
Why was the food a struggle in China?
Just cleanliness, hygiene. It was really funny. So I was at Fox. I was in the movie business.
Mm-hmm.
I was in charge of distribution and marketing for New Regency. And then in 2008, I kind of got fed up with everything. I went to work for Obama in Florida. And then after the campaign was over, the country was in such disarray, and economically, everything was screwed up, and Hollywood was screwed up. So I entertained an offer from a good friend of mine that I grew up with, or that I knew growing up. He's a Dutch architect, and he started a shoe company, and he was living in China. So he said, come to China and run my company for me. So I moved to China, and first week there, I was adventurous. I was like Anthony Bourdain. I was like eating street food or whatever. And then the second week there, I was in the bathroom the entire time.
I like watching people eat all the crazy foods.
Yeah.
But I know if I got there, I'd be a little nervous.
No. I was dying. My insides were exploding. It was horrible.
Yeah.
So then after that, I became a little bit more careful. And I decided I was just going to eat like rice and chicken every day, or rice and chicken and vegetables every day. And there was this restaurant near our office in Guangzhou, in the city we were living in. And it was called Number 8. And 8's a good luck number. I don't know. It was very simple food. Like the food cost maybe like $1 for lunch. It was nothing.
That sounds nice.
Yeah, it was great. And we'd walk there and we'd all eat together. And I ate there for a few days. And then one day I'm eating my rice and chicken, and out of the corner of my right eye, I see in the kitchen there's like a window, and you could see the big rice cooker. Like they all have in China. There's a rice cooker, so there's an industrial sized rice cooker filled with rice, and while I'm enjoying my lunch, there's a big giant rat that's about a foot tall. Eating rice from the rice cooker. So after that, I stopped going to Number 8. And
that'll ruin it.
Yeah, and I started buying food and started cooking and started like making sure that I, kind of knew what was going in and that I was cleaning the food and everything. And then I remember like a few weeks after that, Rem, the Dutch guy that I was working with, he said to me, let's go to the American restaurant. And I was like, what? There's an American restaurant here? Mm-hmm. And we were in the part of town that was very, very Chinese.
Yeah.
There was not as many expats. So we get into a taxi and we go to the other part of town and we get to the American restaurant and it's McDonald's. So
you're like, and I found all the food I needed.
Yeah.
So
and then
delicious.
And McDonald's delivers and KFC delivers in China.
Oh, interesting.
So if I didn't want to cook, I had those two options, and you'll see them on bicycles, like driving to people's houses.
That's hilarious. I don't really eat fast food anymore. Like if I sometimes eat fast food, I'll get like a Wendy's spicy chicken sandwich. For some reason, that is like my go-to thing that I would get if I was going to do that. So I don't ever eat it because I don't really need to, right? I have even easy Mexican food I can drive through if I need to. But for some reason, when I'm traveling places that are a little like strange, if you see things like McDonald's and stuff like that, you almost get like a sense of relief. You go, okay.
I have a good friend. She forbids her children to eat McDonald's, and it's very specific about McDonald's. And I told her, I'm like, listen, you know, as bad as you think McDonald's is, you could go to some mom and pops, and they'll be sourcing their meat from a questionable source, and you'll have no idea. At least you know McDonald's has procedures and standards, and their sources. So when you travel the world and you're struggling to eat something,
it's just the procedures that make me feel comfortable.
Yeah, you know that there's that the supply chain is at least, you know, it might not be ethical, it might not be the best quality, but it's definitely not going to be dirty, or because they're going to open themselves up to liability. So
yeah, you know, it's the one weird comfort, because when I'm at home, I'm like, no, because I can afford to choose everything else.
Yeah, and you know your neighborhood, you know the restaurants that are around you, so you know who's making the good stuff and who's cooking up rats.
Oh, yikes. So you lived in China for a while.
Yeah.
And that was for the shoe company?
Yeah, so China was an adventure. I didn't know anything about shoes. The thing I tell people is I went from showbiz to shoe biz, and I learned how to make shoes, but not myself, but basically how to run a shoe brand, a shoe company. We opened, the company was called United Nude. It's a architectural shoe brand. And we opened 11 stores, and I opened a lot of different accounts around the world, and the shoes were very interesting. People either love them or hate them. But a lot of it taught me kind of what I didn't want to do in the shoe business, kind of showed me things that later on when I left United Nude and I started this brand in Peru, they showed me kind of what I wanted to do instead. So when I left China and started this brand called Fortress of Inca, making shoes in Peru, the idea was to kind of put people ahead of profits and to really think about the shoe making process and the shoe industry in a different way. So it was about making shoes that were comfortable, that people were going to actually wear, because the worst thing I'd found was, you know, making shoes that people said looked beautiful but never wore.
You can't wear them ever. It's like a beautiful pair of heels that a woman gets.
Yeah, absolutely.
That are gorgeous, but then they're so uncomfortable that, one, you can only wear them for an hour, but you can't do any walking in them. And if you did walk in them, you'd look so unattractive, it ruins the shoe anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, that's exactly right.
I won't buy heels like that. I don't do it.
And you know, and there's a place and a time for stiletto heels, but not every woman could wear that every day, and some do, and they ruin their feet. Yeah. But I found that our customer that was willing to pay a fair price for fair wages for our workers and for good quality, they wanted a heel that was a little bit more sensible. So we make a lot of ankle boots. We have nice flat shoes, and everything is from the perspective of treating the customer fairly, so giving them a good value for their money, and also letting them know that when they buy a pair of shoes, it's going to last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I always loved it when my mother's friends or my friends' mothers would come to me and pull out a pair of like Bruno Magli shoes made in Italy in the 80s when Italian shoes were still good and made in Italy.
Yeah.
And just show me the quality of the leather and show me the quality of the sole. And maybe they'd resoled it a few times because it's just a perfect shoe and it fit them perfectly.
Yeah.
So that was the idea with Fortress of Inca. And we've had a good response. We got into anthropology with that brand, and nice. It does well. I mean, it's not the most successful brand because people are so name brand conscious. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the major department stores, they want to have the Michael Kors brands and stuff like that. Right. But those shoes are all made in China. I saw them being made, and they cut costs on things that to me are really important, like a leather insole. Like if you don't have a leather insole and you save $1.50 and you choose a polyurethane insole, you're going to end up with a really stinky foot and a stinky shoe, and that's just nasty. And then you won't wear the shoe, and so now even though you've saved $50 in the price of the shoe, you're going to wear it less, and then you're going to buy something else that you don't need. So that's it, and also choosing for the out part of the shoe, the upper. So, I want to choose a leather that's going to age well, because I know that this shoe is going to fit your foot great. The more you wear it, it's going to be more comfortable, and then you're just going to want to wear it all the time. So you have to have a leather that's going to age really nice. Yeah. Even if it gets scratched up, it's going to look awesome.
They get more cool that way.
Yeah.
They definitely get cooler that way.
Personality.
And that's the thing, is that it seems like these days we have so much accessibility to cheap products. Right? They're really easy to get and they're quick to get. And then, sometimes I'll find myself buying things and I'm like, I need something real quick to grab. And man, I just never enjoy it in the same way. It certainly doesn't last as long. The wear and tear on it is awful. And then it just doesn't feel special. And it's kind of nicer to have shoes, but lots of other items too in your house that seem more unique.
Right.
And they're handmade. And all of that stuff is just bound to get more and more special. It's already special, but it's bound to get more special as we drift even further into the Amazon world that we already have.
Yeah.
Because I'm in it. I'm in that Amazon world for sure. But I have certain items in my house where I'm like, but this was special. This was more expensive, but man, it's held up, and I've had it for a decade.
Have you been to Portland, Oregon?
No.
Okay, so Portland, Oregon is like the one city in the United States that kind of gets it.
Oh, really?
Where you're going to meet a guy who like has a PhD in astrophysics, but decided to become like a cobbler or to make bicycles or to do carvings. And it's going to be the best thing that you could ever make, and the product's going to come out so amazing, and people will pay that price. And they're frugal people in Portland, or at least they're known to be, but it's about quality, and it's such an interesting...
You don't have to buy as often too, though, which is nice.
That's the whole thing, is like you should buy quality, not quantity. But we've been trained by marketing and by the stores that have become mega powerful to buy frequently. So my politics and my kind of beliefs with regard to this shoe brand are aligned. I think that we've done a terrible thing by propping up companies like Walmart that pay their workers less. And I was in China where they make everything for Walmart, and there are Walmarts there, and you just see that it's a battle for pennies. They're going down as far as they can go, and a lot of the bigger companies, they will audit their factories so that there's an assurance that the workers are being treated fairly and the workers are being paid what is the local minimum wage. But the problem with that is that they cheat in China, and I was a witness to it. So what happens is the big factory can't handle your order because it's got so many orders, and then they'll subcontract to a factory that's located somewhere where you never be able to find them, and you have no idea what's going on there. And you don't know if they're substituting materials. You don't know what they're paying their workers. You don't know what the safety is for the workers. There could be a fire. They could suffocate. The building could collapse like Rana Plaza did in Bangladesh a few years ago, and thousands of people died. And the Walmarts of the world and the Macy's and the Nordstroms and all these companies, they have the ability to kind of pretend that they weren't a part of it because they do an audit and they visit that big factory and they see, how shoes are made in the big factory. They don't see how shoes are made in the outsourced factory. That's a few hours away. Yeah. And it's just, our policy of offshoring and sending all of our manufacturing abroad has kind of led to this, situation in our own economy where we've just become consumers. So that's all we know how to do is to buy. And so if you don't buy stuff all the time, what the hell are you doing in life? So I understand why we are the way we are, I'm not quite sure how we can change and go back to a different time. I read an amazing book called The High Cost of Fast Fashion. And in it, the author, she talks about how in the 1950s, women would own, on average, 5 dresses. And the dresses would cost what today would cost about $250 per dress.
Yeah.
And they were all handmade. And they were all handmade in America. Like no average person would be bringing in dresses from Paris or Italy. And, and there was nothing from China at that time. And if it would break or tear, they would sew it and repair it. People didn't buy every week. Mm-hmm. They didn't have a haul on YouTube of what they bought that ultimately is going to end up in a closet. It's going to end up in a landfill. It's going to be, it's just crap.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I was at the mall yesterday. I don't go to the mall very often anymore because, you kind of don't need to for the most part.
You live in the beach.
Because I live at the beach. I live online purchasing things. Most things I buy online because it's like I know my measurements and I'll just try to do it there.
Right.
Because I hate driving down there and the traffic and the people and the whole thing most of the time. So I hadn't been in the mall in a while. And I was looking for a dress for a wedding that I have to go to in the next couple days. So I'm walking around, and the Fashion Valley Mall down here has become, mostly a luxury mall with extremely expensive shops. They've been taken over by, Hermes and the Michael Kors and all of that stuff. And then you have but then you have like Forever 21 and H&M where you can get dresses for. I'm looking at these prices, and it's gnarly because it's $12.90.
Yeah.
For a dress.
It's shocking.
It's not a great dress, though. Is this clearly a quality dress?
It looks great.
It may look okay on,
You wear it once or twice.
Well, if you wash it, it might fall apart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's not made from the best materials.
No, clearly not.
And for sure that they made it in a factory with questionable ethics, like I talked about. So.
Yeah. But it's just nuts to see that you can get, like $2 shirts everywhere and all these other kind of items, but you can definitely feel like I'm buying really cheap stuff. It doesn't feel the same to grab a bunch of that as opposed to going to a place where, I'm not even saying just those particular brands like the Michael Kors or whatever, but just anything where you know that everything's more quality and it's a little bit more handmade and there's less of them.
Right.
It's a completely different feel. And it's a bummer because you have to space out your shopping. They'd have to budget specifically and have in mind, like, this is the next item I'm buying.
Right.
I will wait.
It's become acceptable to wear high-low, so people will wear like a really expensive stuff with really cheap stuff.
Yep.
Before, people would never be caught dead doing that.
Yeah.
I think
people that have like all Forever 21 and then like a $400 purse.
Yeah, and that's all that exists in terms of retail. So the middle of the road stores that Fortress of Inca or Huma Blanco, my other brand, were selling to 2 or 3 years ago, they're gone now.
Yeah.
And so now you just have really high end because those customers are either foreign tourists who are coming to visit or ladies who have wealthy husbands who that's pretty much is their job to shop. And the really cheap retail stores, the H&M, the Uniqlo, the Gap, and Forever 21.
Yeah, it's kind of wild.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild. And I didn't realize how many people from other countries were coming in with so much money until many years ago I worked at the Sony store that was in that mall.
Okay.
And the people that would come in there, and back then like 4K TVs were $5,000 a piece because they were brand new.
And they would buy it?
And they'd buy it like nothing. But when people, you can tell when they have money because they're just like, oh yeah, I'll take one of those. Yeah, add on this, add on that. They don't ask about numbers ever. They're just like, sure, I'll take all this stuff.
They probably come from a country that doesn't have free trade. So they have huge duties and import taxes. So for them, they were getting a great price and they were happy to buy it.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I was completely unaware until I was working directly in one of those stores. Then what else do I know about you? You seem very political.
Yeah, so I've become more political because of the traveling and because of the living abroad and understanding. I think it all kind of relates. So when I was working at Fox, my boss was a big George Bush supporter, and I couldn't stand George Bush. So
Right.
that kind of led me to working for Barack Obama in 2008, and then I came back in 2012.
Dang, it was that much of a force that you were like, I have to go.
Yeah,
To go all the way
I think
opposite.
so. I think I kind of I was always very passionate about politics. When I was 17, I worked for Bill Clinton in the California headquarters. But then the Bill Clinton presidency was so mired in scandal and kind of
Yeah.
gross in many
Still
ways.
having their moments.
Yeah,
it seems.
that it kind of turned me off from politics entirely, and I went to study. I studied law school, and then got into the movie business, and really kind of forgot about politics until the Iraq War, and I felt like the whole country was being bamboozled by George Bush, and my just listening to Republicans, people in my family that were so blinded by being pro-Israel that they thought that whatever Bush was doing was going to be good for Israel, and ultimately nothing that is war is ever going to be good for any country. And so, I got fed up, and Barack Obama came around, and he was saying all the right things, and I felt we needed change, and so I quit my job and worked for Peanuts in South Florida. I was getting felons their voting rights back, and I was registering voters. And at night, I was talking to wealthy Jewish South Florida people and getting them to kind of donate money to the campaign and telling them that Barack Obama is not going to be bad for Israel. And so, I've always been kind of politically minded. At times it gets silenced a bit because there's nothing really that you can do.
That's the weird place. It feels like with most of the people that I know, people step away from it because they just go, well, what's real? What's fake about this? What is it just to get them in? They'll say whatever they want to get into office.
Right.
Does my vote matter?
Right.
Why pay attention? Am I actually making any sort of difference here? Are they just going to keep doing what they've been doing since forever?
It's shocking that 60% of Americans or less vote in presidential elections, and most other countries, in Peru, for example, you're required to vote by law. If you don't vote, you get penalized and you have to pay a fine.
Yeah.
I just saw in Uruguay, it's like 96% of people vote. And we discourage people from voting here and from participating, and we kind of make it so polarizing that people don't want to voice their opinions. So from time to time, I do make my opinions known, and I've received a lot of criticism from friends, but a lot of people do come up to me and say, thank you for saying something. I actually learned something, or I saw something from a new light, and that little bit of encouragement has always been something that kind of led me forward. But I believe in just grassroots, organizing people, getting them to the polls. The reason I worked in Florida was because in 2000 that election was won by 540 votes. So
in that state.
So when I worked in South Florida, I was working with mostly black neighborhoods, and everybody was gonna, they were pro-Obama, but you got a response from a lot of people. Why should I vote? And to be honest, the governor there made it very, very difficult for people to vote. They closed a lot of polling places. They had 2 weeks of voting. In 2008 and 2012, they just had 1 week, and they don't let felons vote, and the process is very cumbersome on purpose to keep people from voting. So
a lot of government things seem to be a little bit more cumbersome than I wish they were.
Yeah, it should be easy. If the government wanted you to vote, it would be easier. But that's why you go down there. That's why you go and you work hard and you get people to the polls. You convince them that we need you. And people live in these bubbles. They think, I'd come to somebody's house and I'd knock on their door. We got this. We got this. I'm cool. Mm-hmm. I don't need to do that. And, yeah, if I had to put the person in my car and just drive them over to the polls myself, I would do it. And on election day, all the people that forgot to vote for the first 2 weeks of early voting, or the 1 week in 2012, we had 14-hour lines at the polls, because that's when it gets real.
Right.
People don't think, so today we're in May, but nobody's really thinking about the midterm elections in November until a few days before that. Like right now, people are trying to tune it out because it's so far away, and the news happens so quickly, and every day it's like something else, that you kind of lose you don't know where we're at,
No, and I mean, a lot of people don't even know like what issues are coming up and what's going on until the last second, and maybe somebody mentions like, "Oh, did you vote?" And because the local stuff's supposed to be the stuff that's like extra important,
right?
Well, the ones that you can truly
that's what you can vote on, yeah.
Besides, a lot of people just go out and vote for presidents every 4 years,
right? Well, and we should be aware of that, when people are organizing, and make sure that that's when we. Make the biggest leap forward. So, I'm very encouraged about 2018 November, but 2020 is everything. It's the presidency, but it's a third of the Senate, and every 2 years is Congress. So, if you win everything, then you get to change everything back or forward, however you like. And so that's what people didn't really understand in the past election with 2016, was that everybody who was pro-Hillary, they didn't understand that no matter what, if she was going to win, she was not going to win the Senate, she was not going to win the Congress, the House of Representatives, and she wasn't going to be able to do anything. And the Republicans made it plain and clear that they were going to be obstructionists. And so my belief was, either win big or go home. Sometimes it makes better sense, to use a sport analogy, to just punt the ball than to go for it on fourth and be caught with the hot potato in your hand, and for her to be seen as weak, and then for a strong Republican to come in. I might be cynical, but I think that Donald Trump is the worst of the worst. He's so ridiculously bad at being a president, at being pretty much anything. It's laughable.
It's scary that he got to that point. It's the only election I watched where I got physically felt ill.
Yeah,
because I was like, "What has gone? Something's gone so terribly awry."
Yeah.
Now, I don't understand how this. I guess I had too much trust that the system would keep somebody that out, even just because he's
right.
He's
but
a celebrity character.
Maybe thank God he did get elected. Maybe thank God the Republicans have put in their hands this hot potato that's just going to bring them all down, and
which seems to be what the mentality is now. Is it like, well, now we can see how kind of messed up everything has gotten, and that will instigate some change now going forward.
Yeah, it woke a lot of people up, but just to see him in legal trouble, to see the people that are enabling him, to see the people that are outwardly working for corporations and not for the middle class and for working people, it gets people riled up. The tax scam that they passed this year, the Republicans saved a lot of corporations billions of dollars from paying taxes, and
seems to always happen.
The average American is going to end up with like $70.
Yeah,
and programs are going to be threatened and closed. Programs that we need, money for infrastructure, money for all the things that the government can do. I think that there's a fundamental difference in America between one philosophy, which is the libertarian philosophy, which is people are bad. So look out for yourself. Government is bad because it helps people. So screw government. And then there's the belief of other people who I think are more enlightened, maybe a little less cynical, that people are good and that we need to help everybody. We need to provide equal opportunity to everybody. I think it's really interesting in the racism debate when people talk about race. They always talk about how things are now, but I don't think people really understand that that we don't have equality of opportunity to begin with. People are not given access to free healthcare, free education, and so you inherit what you inherit from your parents. And so the legacy of slavery, racism, Jim Crow, all these things that people have had to endure is a lot more than just a skin color thing. It's, you have a prejudice because based on somebody's skin color, and that's how racism affects people on a daily basis. But how do we get to a situation where we can be judged on as a meritocracy on what people actually are able to accomplish? How do we get to a situation where everybody has at least the basic rights that human beings should be entitled to?
And enough of an opportunity? Is
just-
it looking at some of these areas that have kind of, it seems like, been ignored or have really kind of fallen into an extra sense of poverty, and there's not enough access to education? Would it be bringing them up to a real livable, comfortable level, so that we're all to create some sort of evenness that way? I don't.
Yeah, if you look at the numbers statistically, socioeconomically, Black people are poorer, less educated, and have less access to healthcare. So if we made those things non-factors and everybody had access to it, then you would see a real change in the society. And I think that people would not necessarily view other people based on their race or their culture as socioeconomically challenged or not, and you'd look more at the individual themselves. I mean, it's difficult to do, but a lot of countries have done it successfully, and I think that our country's done it successfully. The more that we've done in terms of social programs, the more our country has advanced.
Yeah. From the countries you've been to, do you see anything that they're doing a little bit better than us?
I think a lot of countries are doing healthcare a lot better than us. I mean, I think we have the best doctors in the world, but we get ripped off on a daily basis. I was when I was living in China, I had to do an MRI, and it cost me $80. I paid for it cash, and I laughed the whole time. Yeah. I did an MRI recently. Everything was fine, but I was charged $13,000.
Yeah, it's madness.
Yeah. So you have to buy expensive insurance, and then the insurance negotiates with the healthcare provider, and all the costs are fake. Nothing is real.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have insurance, you get the retail plus price, but your insurance ends up paying a wholesale price. But the name of the game is there's a middleman in there. And our problem in this country is the people who have that libertarian philosophy that believe that government is bad, people are bad, look out for yourself. They don't want to be in a system that looks out for everybody. They want to look out for themselves. And they don't want to have government health care because they believe that government will do a bad job of it. But
we've got trust issues everywhere.
Yeah, I mean,
we've got huge trust issues now, even with doctors. Like, say when you go to the doctor and you're doing like basic checkup stuff, or you got something pretty simple going on, it feels like every time that I've gone, they try to push tests on you that you don't even need. Or they'll be like, I know exactly what's wrong with you, but hold up, we're going to do like 5 or 6 tests here. Though none of that stuff is covered by my insurance.
Right.
And so what should have been a $40 visit has now turned into hundreds of dollars when it wasn't even necessary.
So you don't know if the doctor wants to make money off of you.
Yeah, and I found myself questioning. I was like, okay, well, is that necessary? Do I have to do that?
Yeah.
And the doctors always kind of give you this weird, they look at you. It's almost like they pause for a couple seconds because they're surprised you're asking.
Yeah.
And
they'll be like,
well, I mean, I'm pretty sure this will fix it, but we should always do these particular things.
Right.
That in itself, the fact that they are pushing something on you don't need, they're basically saying, no, you don't need to do that. I'm just adding it on. It creates a big trust issue. And everybody I know experiences that. And that's somebody you want to be able to trust.
Yeah, I don't think you'd have that conflict of interest if the government was paying for it or if it was covered by everybody, and you would trust your doctor a lot more. I mean, it's just sad. It's sad that that's the case, that pharmaceutical companies can charge $1,300 for prescription pills, and just
Everybody's scared to not have insurance because you're scared that you'd get some pills that cost $300 a bottle.
right.
Or something crazy.
Right.
And you're like, why is it $300
nuts.
a bottle? Why is
No,
the generic 20?
Yeah.
And it's the same medication? I don't.
And you talk to somebody from Europe or from Canada, and they just don't understand why we are the way we are. But that's the reason. That's the reason that we have a lot of our problems, is because we don't trust each other. We don't believe that people are good in general, and we don't look out for the little guy. And so if the shit hits the fan, we're screwed in this country. Everybody is one medical emergency away from bankruptcy in this country. I mean, not everybody. There's the top 1%. Your buddy Jeff Bezos is never going to have to worry about that.
No, he's got enough to go around, right?
But most other people are, and you pretend like it's not going to happen to you, or you worry that it's not going to happen to you. But ultimately, that's how people vote. People vote based on their fears, and my hope is that the millennials and the generation now that's going to hopefully take over society are going to realize that and create a safety net for every citizen. So being a citizen of the United States is worth something. I mean, it's not worth very much. I mean, yeah, it's the richest country in the world, and there's a lot of economic opportunity here, and we have a lot of great resources, and we have the most consumers in the world, but we don't get free healthcare, we don't get free education, we don't get a basic income, and as the country becomes automated. And
do you believe in the concept of creating like a universal basic income?
For sure. I think that there's going to be, Uber is the first kind of sign of this, but yeah, people are going to become, there's not enough work to go around, and that's fine. That's fine. We don't have to work hard. We should work smart. Mm-hmm. Technology is going to solve a lot of problems, but if we don't change society quickly enough, you're going to have a lot of people that are going to be unemployed, and they're not going to have the ability to contribute to the society. So,
yeah, different types of jobs will be in more demand. But do we have people skilled enough to do those too?
No, yeah, we have the people. We have the ability to train everybody. Mm-hmm. What we should remember is that we have the number one consumer-based society in the world. So we are consumers. So we should make our poor and our working class people that become redundant, they should be able to still participate in the economy, and they'll spend all their money. They talk about the velocity of money. So wealthy people, they hoard it and they don't spend it because there's not enough yachts to buy, or they don't need multiple yachts or multiple planes.
No more than 3 for sure.
But if somebody's making $8 an hour, they get $15,000 a year. They're going to spend all of that. Mm-hmm. Now you double their wage to $16 an hour, and they're making $17,000 a year. They're going to spend all that too. Or if they make $30,000 a year, they're going to spend all that too.
It's easy to spend that. Right? It goes fast.
Yeah. So when you don't have a lot of money, there's a lot of necessities you need to buy. It helps. When I was in China, I saw the middle class being created in a country where you had only just a rich government class, and then you had hundreds of millions of poor people. All of a sudden, a middle class was being born. 10 million people, and then now 100 million people are in the Chinese middle class. And you're defined as middle class by being able to purchase a home for the first time, being able to purchase a car for the first time. Our middle class is shrinking. We're being squeezed. Mm-hmm. People are living longer, and so their parents are not leaving them an inheritance when they're supposed to die at 70. People are not dying at 70. Now they're dying at 90, and the middle class wealth, whatever there was left, is being sucked up by health companies and insurance companies and banks. So, yeah, Wall Street goes up, but if you look at it on a micro level and you look at individual families, people are being squeezed. So, and if you're not smart enough and you don't see what's happening in China, the Chinese are building a middle class so they won't need us. Right now, they need us because we're their consumers. We buy stuff. We don't make anything really. And so they're selling to us. But as soon as they have their own middle class, they won't need us anymore. And then the great story of the United States will be over.
Well, that's epic.
And I mean, listen, it'll be a slow ride down, but it'll be a decline. And we got used to the concept of every generation doing better than their parents. That has stopped, and as it declines and declines, you're going to see every generation doing worse than their parents if we don't change things around. So
it's a joke these days. We're like, when I get to buy a house, and everybody's like, yeah, right.
Yeah, you can't afford.
You're right, like you can buy a house.
Well, these.
Especially we live in these pricier cities, of course, too.
No, but everywhere you go to any city, it's planned. Yeah, the people who control city councils and who get elected mayor, they are in the pocket of developers everywhere. So whether it's Kansas City or it's Beverly Hills, there's a plan in motion to make sure that property values go up every year.
Yeah. And what are they really benefiting from? Just to keep this 1% of people really rich? Like, what's the benefit? Sure. What's the benefit of your whole country struggling so much and creating this much distrust and fear and
right?
You know what I mean?
Like, there are a few very wealthy people who get it and who understand and who can kind of zoom out and understand how unpatriotic it is to hoard money, but they get called liberal elitists. And so they get muted by the really evil people, the Kochs of the world, and so I mean it's evident. You look at Trump, you look at who he appointed to head various cabinet departments. It's people that just want to undo government, undo regulation, make it really easy for rich people to get richer, and screw everybody. Screw the environment, screw poor people, screw black people and Mexicans. Just let's keep it going. But they don't understand that at the end of the day, you're going to end up like
But they
like
want us
South
to keep
Africa.
buying their stuff, and we don't have any money. Like,
Well,
that's weird.
Yeah.
It's all it's just the mindset, I guess, of anybody that's...
They'll squeeze it until the very end. You know, I was in South Africa in 1998, and it was scary. It was a turbulent time. The government had just changed, and it was just very, very violent. And if you had any money from before apartheid, you would get carjacked, you'd get mugged, and a lot of those people left South Africa. So that is the potential outcome of having a society that is desperate and poor. Mm-hmm. And you know, you'll hear about wealthy people getting mugged and killed, and there will be more crime. And those are things that we can really avoid if we just think about the middle class and the working class and understand where we're going as a society. Understand that automation and offshoring are going to make it more difficult for people to make an income. So we have to supplement their lives and their bank accounts so that they can participate in the economy and do what America is best at, buying stuff.
Yeah. You can have more of a long-term mindset.
Yeah.
For sure. And understand the issues that are kind of going on. It's weird because I remember back when I was younger, you know, it was like that MTV Rock the Vote era.
Right.
Where there was everybody wanted you to know about the issues, and it was exciting, and it was go out and vote. And nowadays it just feels like, it doesn't matter what I do anyway. That feels like the energy, especially in a place like California. Yeah. And if you're a more liberally minded person, you go, my vote doesn't matter anyway, because we're going to go Democrat.
It doesn't matter in California, but there are a lot of House races. I mean, you know,
the electoral college is a strange thing.
Yeah, you're in San Diego. There's Republican congressional people here that we should definitely get rid of. I think that California should be the progressive example for the rest of the country, just to show people what we can do. And we have turned around California. When I was working for Clinton in 92, California wasn't as blue as it was, as it is today. Mm-hmm. So, you know, Hillary won here by 3 million votes. So if you voted for Hillary in California, you might have been wasting your vote. You could have voted like I did for the Green Party.
Yeah. Well, it's a bummer that there's only two, that there is also that idea of, there's a two-party system
Right.
and there's all these other people that might be on there, but it's considered a wasted vote to vote for them. That's a shame. Because if more people felt that it was possible for
Right.
one of those other candidates to actually have a chance,
Right.
then you could start to see kind of larger shifts happen. But nobody thinks that way.
Right.
It's you got to pick a Republican or a Democrat. Otherwise, it's nothing.
Well, it's not. It was the mailing list, but now because of Citizens United, it's about how much money you can raise with, and so the two-party system kind of helps you. The Republicans are tied into the wealthy donors and the corporations, and the Democrats have a coalition of African Americans and labor organizations, and so you get plugged into one of those, and they help you raise money, and they have a system that works. But if we did government-funded elections like most other reasonable civilized countries do, you'd see an emergence of third parties coming up. I mean,
because they don't have to raise all of their own funds,
right? Or the government would limit it. So Citizens United was a Supreme Court case that was a disaster for our democracy. But essentially, it said that money is speech, and the First Amendment is the most important thing in our Constitution. So the Supreme Court wanted to protect free speech, and so they said you can't limit how much people want to speak their mind with their money. So it's a disaster. We need a constitutional amendment to change that, or maybe a Supreme Court that is a little bit more progressive and will view the Constitution in another way. So until that happens, I think we really need to look at how effective we can be in organizing people through social media and technology, and just getting out there to the grassroots and knocking on doors. If you have the people, if you have the mobilization, if you have the will, I think we can really have a great result in 2018, and hopefully in 2020 decimate the Republican Party, the party of the rich and the powerful, and rewrite the rules for a new generation.
Yeah, that'll be the thing. There seems to be different ideas on where we need to go with that. Have you heard about the concept of the presidency? They said looks silly now.
Right.
The fact that we have this one guy at the top that's like, how much power does he really have? What is this? Would it be better if there was more people in control, or do you think it's?
I think our system of government is
still functional.
Yeah, it's functional the way it works. I mean, there are enough checks and balances, and I think we might see that being tested later on, if Trump is found to be in collusion, whether there's going to be an indictment of him or whether he's going to use executive power, and how the Supreme Court or how Congress will react to it will be an interesting lesson in constitutional law for the country.
Do you think he would get elected again?
Stranger things have happened. If the Democratic Party doesn't get their act together soon, then that might happen. But my dream scenario as a progressive is to watch Donald Trump think that he'll get elected until the very last minute, and then to have him indicted or impeached, or have him resign in his third or fourth year of presidency, and for the Republicans not to be ready, and then to wipe them out that way.
Gotcha. Are you a Bernie supporter?
I'm a big time Bernie Sanders supporter. I love his message. I think that he's viewing our country in a way that is too optimistic. But I think that's what we have to be. The biggest generation that we've had in our country was the baby boomers, and they were born right after World War II. And the entire history of our country, and maybe the world, was written by them. The rules were written by them. They got an infrastructure system built for them in this country in the 1950s. We spent all of our money basically creating roads for their parents to drive on and for things to be able to travel. We created a lot of universities. We gave their parents a GI Bill so that their parents could be educated. So society really, really transformed after World War II because there were so many babies being born, and then later on in their adolescence and their youth, they all, were able to go to college more than their parents did, and they even protested while they were at college. It wasn't seen as something that had to be done, but basically it was seen kind of as college became kind of a place for people to go and discover themselves. And because we became wealthier as a country, and we can credit the civil rights movement, we can credit the anti-war movement, we can credit women's rights with the fact that baby boomers were there in the 1960s and early 70s, and their parents had accumulated wealth, and there was a middle class. It's all about middle class. Like you don't have mass movements anywhere that create serious change without a strong and vibrant middle class. So as they've become older, these baby boomers, no offense to my parents or their friends, they became wealthier, and they bought property, and so we had a huge economic boom as they bought houses and the stock market, et cetera, et cetera. But now they're becoming 70 and plus, and they're not in the workforce, and they're becoming an economic drain on our society. And the wealth that they were supposed to pass on to the next generation is not being passed, and it's being sucked up by insurance companies, banks, and pharmaceutical companies and healthcare companies. So we have to change the rules. We have to change the rules for the next biggest group, which are the millennials, and we have to rewrite the rules so that we can similarly flourish for another 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what Bernie sees. And I think that the millennials that were attracted to him, they get it. And it's just a matter of keeping that energy going and keeping people engaged and not letting them
all attention span too.
Yeah. It's hard to keep focused. It's hard to keep focused. So yeah, and I'm in the middle. I'm in Generation X. So a lot of my friends went the other way. They chose the way of the baby boomers, and they think that things should be as they always were. And then you have people like me who, are a little bit more imaginative, a little bit more optimistic, and are dreaming of a change in control in our society. So I think it's pretty certain that Donald Trump will be the last baby boomer president. And so then I think that is optimistic for us. I think he's the last of four. We had Clinton was the first, and then we had George W. Bush and Barack Obama. They were all baby boomers. So if the next president is, I think will surely be from either Gen X or a millennial, or if it's Bernie, from the silent generation. So he's not a baby boomer.
Okay, that sounds intense.
He was born in 1942 or something. Yeah.
Okay, I've never heard the term silent generation.
Yeah,
not a touch.
It's not. It's not a good term, but yeah, they were the generation before the silent generation was called the greatest generation. Mm-hmm. Then the silent, then the baby boomers, then Gen X, and then millennials, and then whatever zennials or whatever. I
have no idea. I don't even know. I always ask you. I'm like, am I supposed to be a millennial?
You were born
I'm a 86.
Yeah, you're definitely a millennial.
Really? That's weird.
You're as millennial as they get.
Really?
Yeah.
God. What? I don't know. I guess I've never associated myself with that. It's almost like I consider the definition of millennial to be people that only existed while the internet was around. Because I was still, when I was young, I didn't have internet. When I was young, we got internet. But I mean, I definitely experienced the world before it and the world after it, which I feel like gives you a certain kind of perspective that's a little bit different than somebody that never lived life without internet.
Yeah, my first email address was in 95, I want to say.
Yeah, the first computer I had was like a Windows 95.
And I was 20. I was 20 years old.
Okay, I was younger than that.
Yeah.
But yeah. But it's like I still remember the time before
You can remember, but your formative years and the way that you interact with the world and are different.
Interesting. Dang. Dang, gotta put myself in that group.
Yeah, and I have a really good example, because if you compare the 92 election when I worked for Bill Clinton and 2008 when I worked for Obama, the people who were working for Obama in 2008 were all millennials, and they all understood technology, and they all had a laptop on their desk and a cell phone. And in 92, nobody had a cell phone, and there was no laptops, and people had paper on their desks.
Crazy.
Landlines.
What is paper and pens?
And there was it's nuts. Fax machines, I think, were just coming around.
Dang.
Yeah.
I just got a printer. It's got fax capability. I was like, who am I going to fax? Nobody faxes.
I'll fax you. You fax me.
What is this? Okay, cool. Well, that was a good chat. It's a good chat.
Really nice.
I learned a lot. I don't know a lot about politics, so I'm always curious talking to people that seem like they're more into it than I've ever been.
I think nobody knows everything about politics, but we need to kind of educate ourselves and kind of understand the world.
Seems like it's getting important to be at least aware.
Power is always important. So if you want power, you got to understand politics.
For sure. Do you want to shout anything out? Your websites, your stuff, your socials?
Yeah, I work. My brand is fortressofinca.com, and another brand that we do is called humablanco.com. And that's about it.
Cool.
And my Instagram with all my food and travel photos and whatnot is Dory Benami, DoryBenami.
Awesome. Thanks, Dory. That's it for this one, you guys. Find me on socials at Courtney Diamond and read the blog at CourtneyDiamond.com. If you enjoy video games like I do, you can follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Courtney Diamond and say hi next time I'm live. And like always, please subscribe and maybe leave a nice rating or comment on iTunes if you want to show your support. I would very much appreciate it. Hope you're having an amazing day, and I'll talk to you guys soon.